Eurovision. For 70 years, the biggest live music show on earth has kept us captivated.
You are watching a piece of modern television history when you watch the Eurovision Song Competition.
We have invited Eurovision winners and not winners and Eurovision lovers to give us the inside stories.
Mary whispered in my ear, "You've won."
And celebrate the shows of the 1970s in all their glory.
The 70s really was the heyday for me.
The hits.
I sat there with my mouth open.
The hosts.
It's a live presenter's nightmare.
Is she with us?
I have got such a river in my valley on her behalf.
All the moves and grooves.
I mean, it's dreadful, isn't it? Oh, Christ.
The greatest gimmicks.
Oh, and it's Napoleon.
Someone has a gimmick, you are going to remember them.
The extravaganzas in the intervals.
The Wombles are quintessentially British.
And the boring scoring.
In those days, they did the scoring with an abacus.
The minutiae you might have missed.
And yet I was wearing a Wombles badge.
And rule change after rule change after rule change.
No, they changed the rules again.
From the doozy of a 12 points
Royaume-Uni, 12 points.
to the nullification of a nil. Get your scorecards ready and grab your flags. It's showtime. Ah, the carefree days of the 1970s. Things ain't what they used to be.
Life in the 70s was pretty grim. Politically, things were tough. Financially, things were bad. It was rather depressing.
Oh, cheer up. The fashion was fabulous.
The streets were piling up with rubbish. Everybody was on strike.
There was a lot of gloom and doom.
I remember it being really cold because there was no central heating, there's no electricity. We had candles at night sometimes. There were strikes going on. They were difficult years.
But there was one shining, tuneful, European, uniting Technicolor beacon to lift our spirits. As long as we weren't having a power cut.
Eurovision once a year just put a smile on everybody's face just for one night.
This was glitz and glamour, and the whole country, the whole of Europe, sat down and watched this competition.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to wish you very welcome to this Eurovision Song Contest 1975.
I'm from a Greek family, and Greeks take the Eurovision Song Contest very, very seriously, as indeed a lot of countries in mainland Europe do.
Every year I was glued to the in fact, the whole family was.
I remember the family gathering. I remember the platters that matter, if you like, the nibbles that we'd put out and celebrate Eurovision.
And in those days, of course, you'd have a newspaper and you'd open out the middle page and it would have all the countries and all the different singers, and you could do your own voting thing. And we did it at home. You know, I'm one of 5 kids, so the 5 kids and my mum and dad would all have our own version of what we thought would be the winning song.
But why were we watching this international sing-off in the first place? For that, we have to head back to black and white and the 1950s.
This is the ITN Eurovision symbol.
Eurovision was set up in 1956, very much as an experiment in live broadcasting.
All the countries talk to one another in English. It's becoming the international language of TV.
NAR Brussels. Bonjour, BBC London.
Kenneth Matthews, good afternoon.
When the Eurovision Song Contest started in 1956, it was meant to be a unifying thing for Europe that had until recently been ravaged by war.
The whole idea, I guess, was let's forget the war, let's put that to one side, let everybody speak their own language, and then we'll form this society where language is not the problem. It's a lovely idea, yeah. A load of bloody rubbish, but a load of great idea.
Nevertheless, it worked. From the start, our continental cousins came up with hits that became all-time classics. And introduced us to international superstars of song.
It was relished to represent your country.
And there were a bunch of tunes that were less memorable.
You get Neapolitan love songs, you get French folk songs, you get Swedish songs about winter and herrings. And then in the 1960s, the Brits changed all that with pop stars.
Yes, pop stars. The UK had this thing nailed.
I fell in love with Eurovision when Sandy Shaw won in 1967, and I still love it to this day.
The BBC are not daft. You know, they know that these people are on German radio, they're on Danish radio, Swedish radio. The BBC were picking people that they thought would be known in those territories and would get votes.
We could afford to be a bit casual about it because we were just coming in the top 5 every year, and sometimes we'd win it, often we'd come second, so we could act like it wasn't a big deal. Whereas for other countries, it was a shot at visibility, it was a shot at reminding people, a worldwide audience, that your country existed.
Then in 1969, controversy rocked the contest. Out in Franco's fascist Spain, our lovely Lulu was boom-banger-banging her heart out.
We were watching the votes and everyone was sort of getting more excited and the room was getting hotter and hotter and hotter. It just built up to a tremendous climax.
And she won! But so did Spain, and so did France, and so did the Netherlands.
There was a bit of a farcical situation with 4 winners.
In a scoring scramble, the likes of which we've never witnessed, all 4 countries had been awarded 18 points. Awkward. What to do? Penalty shootout?
There was no tiebreaker rule in place, so they didn't really know what to do.
There was no mechanic to sift through the 4 and find an actual winner. So all 4 of them were crowned. So consequently, in 1970, you had the lowest number of countries competing because I think people had kind of lost faith.
Yes, in 1970, Austria, Finland, Norway, Portugal and Sweden sulked and refused to play with the neighbours' kids. Sorry, boycotted the contest, leaving only 12 entrants, the leanest turnout since 1959, and triggered the first rule change of the decade.
To make sure that there was only ever one winner again, a tiebreaker rule was introduced, and it meant that if there was a tie for first place, the songs would be performed again and the juries would then decide who was the overall winner amongst those 2 entries.
Off we went to swinging Amsterdam, where the broadcaster creatively made up the shortfall in programme time with a 4-minute introduction.
They also introduced what's become known as postcards.
These snappy little films introduced each contestant before their song and remain an iconic feature of Eurovision to this day.
In those days, nobody had travelled anywhere, so something from France or Switzerland or Italy or Spain was really exotic.
Naturally, the UK entry was filmed in front of Big Ben. How else will we know it was England? And in 1970, the BBC chose marvellous Mary Hopkin to hopefully bring home the Eurovision crown once more.
I thought Mary Hopkin was gorgeous, so beautiful.
She had come off winning opportunity knocks for 6 weeks in a row.
And wasn't she signed to Apple, which made her really credible because it was the Beatles?
And then up came Eurovision with a song that she didn't like, but she said yes because she wanted to represent Great Britain.
Who's there with his beloved that's calling? The door is
It's a song that you cannot get out your head. It's an earworm. Knock, knock, who's there?
Could this be love that's calling?
Oh, stop
I'm really... Now everyone's going to be singing it
For
next
days.
week, for days.
I thought that Mary Hopkin was going to win.
And then suddenly, Dana came in from left field.
When I sang in Eurovision, I was 18 and I was just about to sit my A-levels. I was all set to go to college and I wanted to teach music and English literature. I left for Amsterdam, completely unknown, and the competition changed my life. The day we flew out, I was waved goodbye by 2 cleaners and a porter. And they were so sweet, and they were wishing me good luck. And we got on this airplane. It was all exciting and, nerve-wracking, and what's it going to be like? Felt like Alice in Wonderland. We did have some funny moments. The Spanish team were so eager for their artist, who was Julio Iglesias. They wanted him, of course, to win. So they had these stickers, vote for Spain. I mean, if you stood longer than 1 second in one place, you'd be covered in stickers. So they were everywhere. These stickers were in the lift, and they were in the dining tables, and they were everywhere. And of course, that was before Julio became the huge star.
If it wasn't for Eurovision 1970, we might never have heard of Julio at all. He was well known in Spain, but it was the Eurovision platform that brought those pearly whites to the worldwide audience. As well as this guy. Sorry, Guy.
And of course, who could forget France at 1970? A cross between Austin Powers and our very own Hugh Grant, the one and only Guy Bonnet. I'm sure that's how you pronounce it, but you could see where the money went, on his bins and certainly in the ruffles.
When it came to the show, I was the last to sing.
Snowdrops and daffodils.
She sings the song so well. There was no live pitch correct, which there is now.
Her face just lights up, like someone's just turned on a tungsten light all over her.
Yeah.
And there's something quite magical about that performance.
To me, it stood out, and I said, this girl will win this.
I wasn't looking at the voting. I just wanted to keep every second of this in my mind, because I'd never be in that situation again.
Ireland, 4 minutes.
In 1970, each jury could give 10 points. So that's 1 point for their favourite song for each jury member. Now, Belgium gave 9 points to Ireland. So 9 people in the Belgian jury loved Dana's song. That was unprecedented.
Ireland, 9 votes.
Suddenly, the stage manager, before the last vote came in, he grabbed me by the wrist and he said, "Come with me, you've won." And of course, I hadn't been keeping counts. And I'm pulling all my weight against him, saying, no, the voting's still on. And he's pulling me, and I'm pulling back. And then Mary just leaned over, she kind of almost whispered in my ear, "You've won." It was incredible. The next second, I was surrounded by a sea of photographers. Suddenly, they parted like the Red Sea. And my mum walked through them and gave me a big hug. And that was so beautiful.
Coming up, Clodagh Rogers slays in sequins.
We all wanted to go out and buy a pair of hot pants like Clodagh Rogers had. Didn't look quite the same, unfortunately.
How the BBC chose the host city for 72? Probably.
Where can we go? It was far enough from London to get us for the weekend that we might get drunk. Right, let's go to Edinburgh. Hey, Edinburgh will do.
And the interval acts that could make or break a Eurovision show.
The Wombles are quintessentially British.
Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome, as we continue our cartwheeling cavalcade through the Eurovision Song Contest of the 1970s. The decade when Eurovision had manually operated sets.
In the 70s, it was basically just the stage, and however they set the stage.
Had an orchestra.
They used to put the name of the conductor for each nation before they conducted.
And had audiences dressed in dinner suits.
It was a more polite audience like that, but it still had an atmosphere of huge excitement. This was Eurovision, and it was being broadcast. Wow, it was fantastic.
But it was never really about the trimmings.
It's the songs from Eurovision in the 1970s that, as you ripen in age, because I was but a nipper then, when you hear them latterly, you suddenly realise just how much of an impact they made on you.
When Dana took the Eurovision crown in 1970, the north and the south of Ireland were united in joy, and the world's attention turned to the Emerald Isle.
Dana winning in 1970 was a massive deal for Ireland. Ireland was very much an agricultural, poor country at that point, and Eurovision was really an opportunity for it to host a large-scale international event for the first time.
At that time, we had the beginnings of the Troubles. So they were very tense days and often very dark days. And it may sound like trite, it may sound like ridiculous, but actually it was a relief from a lot of very difficult things that were happening. At that time in Ireland, we didn't have colour television, but BBC very graciously lent them all the colour cameras so that they could broadcast in colour. We didn't have big theatres at that time in Dublin, so everyone packed into the Gaiety.
And once upon a time, a little-known actor had crept the boards at the Gaiety by the name of Terry Wogan. By 1971, El-Tel was a celebrated DJ, and in this year began his long association with Eurovision as the contest commentator on Radio 1.
I just was so delighted to be part of it. Of course, it was kind of crushed backstage, everybody sharing the one dressing room.
And it was a real tight fit because of...
Eurovision rules were changing nearly every year in the 70s, and in 71 they allowed groups of up to 6 people to take part for the first time.
Challenge accepted by Switzerland, Finland and Sweden. But the UK's entry was a solo pop singer, Clodagh Rogers, carefully chosen by the BBC for her fabulous voice, and in the hope that her Northern Irish heritage might mean an easier ride for Team UK.
I don't know whether that was a wise thing to do because she then had death threats.
I'm just your Jack in the Box. I loved the song and I thought she sang it brilliantly. Jack in the Box, you know, whenever love ducks.
I actually think that Jack in the Box was a great song. I really did. But she looked great.
Clodagh Rogers' hot pants were absolutely compelling. I can remember just staring at them. I almost didn't hear the song.
She wears a pair of pink sequin hot pants that then went into every shop by the following Monday. I mean, it changed fashion immediately.
We all wanted to go out and buy a pair of hot pants like Clodagh Rogers had. Didn't look quite the same, unfortunately.
Never mind the draws, what about the scores?
In 1971, the rules around juries changed again. You had 2 jurors, one over 25, one under 25, and they could give points from 2 to 5 for their favourite songs. But there was no rule about how many points you must give. So France ended up giving out 107 points versus Luxembourg's 43.
If I remember rightly, Ireland gave a very big vote to Clodagh. That's so lovely to remember the power of music bringing people together. But the title, of course, went to Séverine.
Yes, French singer Séverine took the honours for Monaco. So we're off to Monaco, right? Wrong. Monaco couldn't find somewhere to stage it, so guess who stepped in to volunteer a venue? The good old UK.
Oh, Christ, if we can't do Eurovision, Christ, where can we go? It was far enough from London to get us for the weekend that we might get drunk. Right, let's go to Edinburgh. Hey, Edinburgh will do.
This 1972 contest took place in Edinburgh and in Scotland for the very first time, and that was a big deal because it was the first contest produced by the UK which wasn't in London. And it also came after our last victory from Lulu, who was indeed from Scotland.
Held at the majestic Usher Hall, the biggest concession to the glamour of Eurovision was sticking up a lametta curtain.
It's a wonder that I wasn't asked to host it at home.
I was there in Edinburgh in 1972, and it was kind of like the Royal Variety performance. It was that kind of audience.
Well, the energy, let's put it this way, I've seen more energy in a slow clap. They're not quite as enthusiastic in the audience as we see today.
But this was the first year to feature a futuristic video wall, giving us a glimpse of the high-tech Eurovision that was to come. Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch, sorry.
Of course, representing the UK that year, the New Seekers.
You know I beg, steal or borrow.
It was an opportunity to do something different. Up until then, we had only had solo artists representing the UK.
They did us proud and came second.
We came second a lot in the 70s.
It'll be the UK's 8th time of finishing in second place. At that point, a record which we've held on to since.
Beg, Steal or Borrow was a huge hit all round, #2 in the contest and #2 in the UK chart.
Eurovision songs in the 70s, certainly the UK songs anyway, always charted and always did really well. Went to #1 or #2 as the New Seekers did. And even the winning song, if it came from abroad, generally did very well in our charts.
And that was true in 72 as Greek singer Vicky Leandros sang in French to win for Luxembourg with a belter which was also a #2 single.
It's a brilliant song. It's kind of just an absolute mess of mascara, slumped in the back of a minicab, wondering whether or not there's even any point in going home. I actively look for that in my ballads. I don't want subtle, I don't want restraint. And I listen to that song a lot.
Shall we take a moment to appreciate the artistry that went into making these 70s Eurovision shows a televisual treat? Not yet on the scale we enjoy today, but the act the host nation laid on for the interval was the time for homegrown talent to shine.
They always put on something relative to that particular country.
It was basically just a device to make time for the vote counting. And it wasn't the big thing that it's now become, almost like the ad break in the American Super Bowl. You know, people vied to be seen. It's a fantastic spotlight. But in those days, it was just a means of getting from A to B.
Ireland gave us the early days of Riverdance in 71. 77 saw your actual Acabilk. And then there were years like 73, when it was frankly bewildering.
The Eurovision interval acts, of course, have their own degree of infamy over the years. But if you're representing your country, why would you necessarily send out a clown in drag?
Just found it quite creepy, not particularly entertaining.
But surely the greatest was in Brighton in 74, when ABBA won with Waterloo, and the interval act was...
Remember you're a Womble. Remember you're a Womble. Who did we put on? The Wombles.
The Wombles are quintessentially British.
ABBA are probably my favourite group in the world, but I have to say, I think they're quite lucky in the way that the British entry that year was not the Wombles. If they'd submitted Remember You're a Womble, then I think things might have panned out very differently for ABBA. When ABBA came back on and did the song, did Waterloo when they'd won, you'll notice that Agneta was wearing a Wombles badge.
Coming up, Cliff's back, and this time it's personal.
I thought I couldn't dance, but this is beyond dreadful. Oh, Christ.
It turns out not everything translates well into English.
Your breasts are like swallows are nesting.
Come on, kids, keep it PG. And Brighton brings the shock showstoppers.
And then up step these upstart Swedes.
Let's get this party started again and sashay, ole, through the Eurovision Song Contest of the 1970s. We don't know why we love it, but we do.
Once you get the bug of Eurovision, you're in. You're hooked.
The Eurovision Song Contest it's just a mad, brilliant idea, which, you know, we somehow have learned we can't do without. If you picture that as an idea now, you'd be laughed out of the building.
1973, there were strikes galore and actual cod wars.
Everton is still lying low in the water, 38 miles off the coast of Iceland.
This gloomy nation needed a win. It was time to release the Cliff.
We're weary of coming second, so we send our very own Cliff Richard, our future Knight of the Realm of this jewel in the silver sea that we call home.
He was massive in those days, Cliff, and we all loved him. Everybody loved him. And he had his own show on the telly and everything, you know. And it was his second time.
He entered Eurovision in 68, and he expected to win it. And everybody expected him to win it. With congratulations.
Cliff was robbed, apparently, so they say, by Spain.
Sound the conspiracy klaxon.
Many people believed, and believe to this day, that Congratulations was robbed of the victory by a single point, that some shenanigans went on.
Yes, when Cliff's Congratulations was cruelly picked to the post by Spain's Maciel singing La 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 in 1968, rumours whipped around that foul play was afoot. Accusations that General Franco had bribed the judges to secure the win for Spain spread like wildfire. The EBU staunchly denied it. General Franco flatly denied it. Cliff declined to comment.
He's one of those people that's had a lot of success in life, and he's not used to losing.
No.
It's like, I'm going again for this.
Power to all our friends. Very good song.
Power to all our friends.
It did have that kind of Beatles feel about it, didn't it? All the brass section that runs through that song has kind of got a Sgt. Pepper's feel about it.
There's one strong man. It's a song that almost sounds political, and yet it's literally about how beautiful the world is. It's got very Eurovision sentiments. It's just about being grateful for what's around and to the music that never ends.
The song was penned by Doug Flett and Guy Fletcher, who were famed as Tin Pan Alley hitmakers.
Flett and Fletcher, they were songwriters of the day, and there were about 10 different teams that were constantly writing British pop hits. This was a big deal for them. This was their big payday, if they could get a song for Europe.
Fun fact here, fact fans. Guy Fletcher's son is the kids' TV superstar Justin Fletcher, a.k.a. Mr. Tumble. Yes, Cliff's hit was penned by Mr. Tumble's dad. Channeling winning vibes only, Cliff flew off to Luxembourg City. This was the third time Luxembourg had hosted, and everything ran like a charm. But tensions were running high thanks to maximum security and armed guards at the venue. Because the previous year, the Summer Olympics in Munich had suffered a murderous attack on the Israeli team, and organisers weren't taking any chances, because in 1973, Israel took part in the Eurovision Song Contest. And before anyone says Israel isn't in Europe, Dr. Eurovision, please set the record straight.
Participation in Eurovision is not necessarily defined by geography. Israel are in Eurovision because their broadcaster is a member of the European Broadcasting Union, and therefore they're eligible to take part.
Thank you, sir.
73 stands out as well for a year of firsts, and it was the first female conductor that we saw, and that was for Sweden.
Conductor Monica Dominique had also composed the Swedish entry, which was remarkable because of...
This was the year that they decided, in all of their wisdom, the organisers that is, that you could sing in any language that you, frankly, could speak or sing in. And so Sweden chose to sing in English, which on any other day would have been lovely for the folks sitting at home.
And every day is like the other day.
Nova and the Dolls? What was the line?
Your breasts are like swallows a nesting.
Oh, your breasts are like swallows a nesting.
And it wasn't just once, it just kept coming up because it was in the chorus.
So we heard it over and over again on repeat.
This song had won through Sweden's rigorous selection process and beaten some band called ABBA. Wonder what happened to them.
Le Royaume-Uni, the United Kingdom.
And Cliff, upbeat, hypnotic, with all the moves and grooves.
I think we all believed that he was going to win.
I'm sure Cliff wouldn't want to watch this footage back now. I mean, I'm not being funny. I like Cliff. Great friend, but my God.
I just watched and I thought, listen to that voice, it's perfection.
He's doing very well in the verse, and then he gets to the chorus. What is he doing with his knees?
Power to the boys that played rock and roll, made my life so sweet.
Awful Cliff, don't dance.
I thought I couldn't dance, but this is beyond dreadful. Was it? Oh, Christ. That song epitomises that period where everybody was lost. Nobody knew what they were doing.
Did we make first place? No. Did we make second? No. But Thanks to power to all our friends, we came third.
If you're Cliff, you're meant to win, right?
Absolutely.
If you come second again, well, you've done the same as you did the last time, but third...
Oh, the humanity.
Why didn't Cliff Richard win? Because it's not as good as the Luxembourg song, which is an absolute banger.
Luxembourg did the double, so all back to theirs again for 1974. We? No.
Luxembourg win. So then they have to host it a second time.
And they say, blow this for a game of soldiers, we can't afford it.
And so the UK steps up, as it does many, many times in Eurovision, because it's a big programme for us. And so it's held in Brighton in 1974.
At the Dome.
Eurovision came to the jewel of the Sussex seaside, Brighton, a hymn to Regency architecture thanks to King George IV, when he was known as Prinny, and somehow it was just the vibe for Eurovision.
I think 74 was one of the greatest Eurovisions.
1974, genuinely for me, was the Eurovision that I remember most keenly.
On her final time fronting the biggest show on earth, the oh-so-fragrant Katie Boyle.
Ostrich feathers everywhere.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
My dad thought she was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, she was every working man's dream.
Katie Boyle looked like royalty. She looked like a princess.
Katie Boyle, impossibly glamorous, gorgeous, and spoke fluent French.
We all knew what nil point meant. You know what I mean? We couldn't speak a word of bloody French, but nil point, we all knew what they were. Thanks, Katie Boyle.
Because she was always a firm hand on the tiller.
She had this schoolmarm charm, but also this kind of aristocratic kind of nature, so she could tell off a jury member whilst flirt with the ambassador.
And who was flying the flag for Queen and Country?
The UK were represented by Olivia Newton-John in 74.
Struth! An Australian.
Has anybody remarked on the fact that a girl from Australia is representing the United Kingdom in this contest?
Yes, a lot of people have said that, but I'm not really, see. I was born in England and I went to Australia when I was 5 and I was brought up there, but I came back here about 8 years ago, so I'm sort of half and half.
Olivia Newton-John. She was a big star. She had her own Saturday night TV show. She'd had hits in America and was the favourite with Long Live Love.
The UK were expected to win, or certainly be in the top 3.
It was a foregone conclusion. And then up step these upstart Swedes.
Now, of course, it's very difficult to explain the seismic shock of the two girls and the two boys. We'd never seen anything like it.
I sat there with my mouth open.
It got straight into your head. It was a fantastic banger of an earworm.
But all us young guys that were there from the record industry, looked at this and went, oh my God.
They just studied all the big glam rock number ones by people like Sweet and Mud and Slade. They were just trying to do something that pinned you against the wall.
ABBA changed everything, not just for my good self, but also for the whole world.
Over to the scoring. For the last 3 years, we had 2 jury members, one over 25, one under 25, with 5 votes each. And this year...
No, they changed the rules again.
We went back to 10 jury members with 1 vote each.
United Kingdom comes next.
You have to remember that some of those judges are old fuddy-duddies that would look on and go, oh, no, I don't like that. The UK didn't give them one single vote.
And that completes the voting of the United Kingdom jury.
How awful is that?
Awfully awkward, that's for sure.
When they won, they were Swedish, for God's sake, they weren't British. I was thrilled. I couldn't have cared less who else was in the competition.
They did it almost like scientifically. It was like They planned that their Eurovision experience of 1974 in the way that you might plan a heist or something. It was just, they left nothing to chance. And hats off to them.
It was sheer perfection. It was, you know, you could just bottle that moment.
The thing I remember most about ABBA winning Eurovision in 1974 is my Auntie Edith had a root poem very similar to Frida's. And Frida, as we know, is the one from ABBA that we'd all want as our favourite auntie. So I just remember thinking, there's my Auntie Edith, who's an usherette in the local cinema/bingo hall, and Frida. And in my mind, they were one and the same.
Coming up, gimme, 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 a gimmick.
Oh, and it's Napoleon.
You've got a great song, you've got great singers, but what have you got to make people remember it? You've got to have a gimmick.
Bruce Welsh steps out of the shadows.
It's good to see Bruce get a rare lead vocal, but, you know, he does fluff his second line, doesn't he?
And Brotherhood of Man do it for Queen and Country.
The Queen's Wave at the time, wasn't it? The Queen's Wave.
I think it remains our greatest ever Eurovision triumph.
Welcome back to our celebration of the song contest that helped us survive the 1970s.
It was people in fabulous frocks. It was music that was, you know, different. It was fun. Eurovision was multicolour in a grey world.
In 1974, the Eurovision world had been spun off its axis by the perfectly pitched performance from 4 spectacular Swedes.
Once ABBA won, Eurovision changed. There's no question about that.
The fact that they looked so different from everybody else, it made people go, ooh.
One of the things I remember to this day is the conductor of ABBA's music wearing the Napoleon hat.
Yes. And as ABBA drew inspiration from the demise of the French Imperial Army in 1815, the Eurovision acts that followed marched into battle with their own weapons.
You've got a great song, you've got great singers, but what have you got to make people remember it? You've got to have a gimmick.
So people would have all manner of crazy instruments. They would have props, crazy props. When I was head judge, you have to score every point all the way through all of those acts. So you're not just voting for first, second, third. You have to put every single act in a placement.
Yes.
So if someone has a gimmick, you are going to remember them more easily.
More often not, it's the more colourful, the more out there acts that we remember of Eurovision rather than the victors themselves. And they're the ones that have become firmly cemented in the firmament of Eurovision.
ABBA have got a lot to answer for.
Eurovision, I believe, was set up in order to bring people together, because music is a universal language, and it does bring people together.
However, in 1975, Eurovision's essence of entente cordiale was tested for the very first time.
In 1975, Turkey entered for the first time.
We were driving out on the main Nicosia to Kyrenia road when we first sighted the aircraft. The Turkish airborne invasion had begun,
which led to Greece withdrawing over the Turkish invasion of Cyprus. In 1976, Turkey withdrew, Greece returned with a song about the Turkish invasion of Cyprus. And in fact, it'd be a number of years before either of those countries actually shared the same stage.
And so began the first of many Eurovision rivalries that dog the competition to this day.
You know, Turkey wouldn't vote for Greece, and Greece wouldn't vote for Turkey, and Ireland wouldn't vote for England, England would, you know, that sort of nastiness, as it were.
Though Greece stayed away, a record number of 19 countries headed to Stockholm, assured of a warm Swedish welcome. Or not, as it turned out.
In the run-up to the contest in Stockholm in 1975, there were protests on the streets against what people called the commercialisation of Swedish music. They objected to ABBA, they objected to Eurovision, and they saw both of those things as representing all that was wrong with the current music scene in Sweden.
But on the 22nd of March, the politics and protests were forgotten.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Karin Falk. And if I haven't fainted with the excitement of it all, it's just because I'm happy to wish you very welcome to this Eurovision Song Contest 1975.
And in 1975, we sent Cliff's old bandmates, the Shadows. Could they succeed where he had failed? Twice?
I think that the Shadows did it because Cliff had done it a couple of times and he hadn't won. And possibly they thought, if we do it and we win, that's going to get right up Cliff's nose.
It's good to see Bruce get a rare lead vocal, but, he does fluff his second line, doesn't he?
Let me be the one who lonely holds you tight. I knew it.
Which we wouldn't have noticed had he not drawn attention to it.
The stakes were as high as a Hank Marvin harmony. Because guess what? Yup, we got yet another rule change.
1975, of course, in the full thrust of the 1970s, we finally get 12 points. I think they finally got the message to sort it out. So we've got 12 points, we've got 10 points, we've got 8 points, and then, of course, familiar territory to us, 0 points.
And how would this latest revision to the law of Eurovision affect our boys?
Royaume-Uni, 12 points. 12 points.
12 points.
A trio of dazzling doozes from Luxembourg, Monaco and France.
But we actually shot ourselves in the foot by giving 12 to the Netherlands, who went on to win.
The Shadows took silver, and the winner was pure Eurovision gold.
The Dutch act, the Nederlands, 1975, Teach In, Ding a Dong, which is actually Dutch for ding dong. Who'd have thought it?
Ding a dong every hour, when you pick a flower, even when your lover is gone, gone, gone.
I love the lyrics. Everyone should take this on board. If you're feeling all right, everything is uptight, try to sing a song that goes ding, ding a dong.
There will be no sorrow when you sing tomorrow and you walk along with your ding, ding, dong. I mean, the lyrics are just gold. Classic.
Also, I quite like the knowingness of Ding a Dong. Listen to it. Maybe it's a big hit, which is ironic because the song they were singing did go on to be a big hit all over the world.
Even in the UK, where it ding-ding-a-donged its merry way into the top 20.
I might have these lyrics tattooed on me. All together now, sing ding dong. Anyone? Politely clapping. 12 points.
It's almost as bad as making your mind up. Those lyrics make no sense either.
France, un vote.
Un vote?
Un vote, oui.
The debut of Do's ramped up the competition.
Hello, Yugoslavia.
But in 1970s Eurovision, the scoring
Norway 14, total 34.
was boring.
Hello, Switzerland. Are you there? Please.
The scoring was very, very different. It took forever.
Grand total of 73.
You could roast your dinner during the scoring.
Your votes, please, for Ireland.
7 votes.
In those days, they did the scoring with an abacus.
It's incredible to look back and realise how rudimentary those scoreboards were.
Ireland, 5 votes.
1, 2, 3.
It went on for
4
hours.
to Switzerland.
And you think, can't get on with it, for goodness sake.
And with all participating countries phoning in their votes long distance and live.
Luxembourg, êtes-vous là? Est-ce que je puis avoir vos votes, s'il vous plaît?
What could possibly go wrong?
Il n'y a pas de réponse de Luxembourg.
I mean, you'd be better off with 2 polystyrene cups and a piece of string when it came to communication back then.
Finlande, 6 points.
Finlande, 10 points. Finland.
6 points.
I lived for the moment when all that went wrong, when you couldn't quite get through or they couldn't hear.
Israel, 1 point.
Yugoslavia?
No, Israel.
Israel.
They'd ring through, hello, Helsinki, what are your votes? I don't have them. Oh,
I loved that. That made it hilarious.
Yes, and that completes the voting of the Finnish jury.
(1976), the sizzling summer thereof, of course. It was a scorcher.
Yes, Britain was in the grip of a heat wave.
Without prolonged showers, we could be facing a summer of drought.
And the way we chose our Eurovision entry was also heating up.
Up until this point, there'd been one singer or one group, and all the songs would be sung, and we would vote on what song we wanted them to sing.
76, they changed all that. The BBC decided to change the rules and make it an open competition, so anybody could enter their song.
And boy, was that a great shout, because from that first song for Europe, we chose this phenomenal 4-piece.
Brotherhood of Man were just like ABBA. They were meant to be just like ABBA.
Tony Hiller was a great writer-producer. He looked at ABBA, analysed ABBA, and came up with Brotherhood of Man. It took us 2 years and ding-a-dong to get the Brotherhood of Man, but hey, it was worth waiting for.
With the hopes of a nation resting on 4 sets of shoulders, Kisses for Me kicked off the competition in the Netherlands.
I loved the Brotherhood of Man song, Kisses for Me. I just loved it.
This was the dance that was done in every school playground throughout the country. This is my era. We were all doing this, boys and girls.
How did the song go?
They didn't want to do the dance. This is what's crazy.
Gosh, that made it.
Yeah, it's the way they do this. Bye, bye, baby. The wave is so...
It's the Queen's wave at the time, wasn't it?
The Queen's wave.
I loved my parents, but should anything have happened to my parents, then if Brotherhood of Man wanted to adopt me, then that would have been cool. I would have been no trouble.
And of course, the rest is UK Eurovision history.
United Kingdom, 12 points.
I remember watching it on television. It walked it.
The United Kingdom won.
Brotherhood of Man winning that competition was fantastic, and it gave everybody a shot in the arm.
Save Your Kisses for Me also had one of the biggest percentages of votes available, so it was a massive victory in the contest.
It was huge. And I just remember it never being off the radio.
And if anything, the question we need to ask is, why aren't there more songs like Save Your Kisses for Me? There should be thousands of songs like Save Your Kisses for Me, not just one.
I loved everything about it, and it went on to be, and still to this day, the biggest selling Eurovision song of all time.
With a whopping 6 million singles sold worldwide.
I think it remains our greatest ever Eurovision triumph. Don't tell Cheryl that.
Coming up...
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
A Eurovision presenter in crisis.
I think she's celebrating behind with all the other artists.
She didn't know what to do. She had no idea. Once she was off script, she had nowhere to go.
A Eurovision icon arrives in our ears.
All of the family are singers and musicians. Must be held to be their neighbours.
It wasn't necessarily about the music anymore. It was about his observations of the acts.
And a Eurovision legend gets a taste of the competition.
It was the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Welcome back to our swinging 70s romp through the world's most multicultural sing-off.
The streets were empty and everybody was watching it, and it was a family event that you could watch. And it was actually about the music.
After Brotherhood of Man bathed us in glory in 76, we were off to London in 77, where the Queen was hosting millions on the Mall as Her Majesty celebrated 25 years on the throne.
I remember my Silver Jubilee T-shirt, which I may have turned into a crop top against the best advice of my mother. But the streets were filled with bunting, and it was the unfettered joy that we needed at the time because of what the country was going through.
Yes, by 77, with pageantry, we had poverty. The Jubilee bunting fluttered in the chilly breeze that was mass unemployment and hyperinflation. There was precious little to be jubilant about.
77 was a very dark year.
Quite literally, thanks to the nightly power cuts.
Wasn't that the year of the dustbin strikes? I remember walking across Grosvenor Square and there was rubbish piled up. I mean, the whole of London, the streets were lined with rubbish bags. It was unbelievable. It really was unbelievable.
It was against this bleakest of backdrops that London prepared to host Eurovision.
1977, the road to Wembley was never more difficult than this, because there were strikes going on, but they were TV strikes, camera people on strike.
It affected everything, and it even affected the Song for Europe.
Well, finally tonight, news of something rock bottom getting to the top. Rock Bottom is the name of the song sung by Lindsay DePaul and Mike Moran, which you won't have seen winning the Song for Europe last night.
The technicians came out on strike, so the Song for Europe, I think, was only on the radio as opposed to being on the TV, which made a difference.
The song we chose was Rock Bottom. Rather poignant as it turned out, because the country itself was at rock bottom too.
The strikes impacted on Eurovision in 77 in many ways. It was meant to take place in April, it took place in May.
But on the 7th of May, the contest finally kicked off, with glorious aerial views traversing the sceptred aisle to London and the glitz, the glamour of...
It was hosted at the Wembley Conference Centre, which has since been levelled.
77 is quite a chaotic contest. You name it, it all happened in 77.
Welcoming our Eurovision family was the nation's favourite newsreader.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
I think on Angela Rippon's behalf, my palms go clammy at the prospect of what she went through when she had to host Eurovision that year.
She can't find the camera. She can't find the red light.
The contest is being staged tonight.
There are a dozen cameras. Which one is mine?
For each of the songs, the BBC Television Orchestra will be under the musical direction of a conductor.
It was almost rock bottom in broadcasting history when you think about it. I mean, trying to find your light on a camera. Anyone?
She was lucky to find any cameras at all after the TV techie strike. And that had caused yet another problem.
There were no postcard images between each of the songs. Instead, viewers were treated to shots of a rather bored-looking audience, some more invested than others, shall we say.
The audience may have seemed at rock bottom, but Mike Moran and Lindsay DePaul lifted the mood with a rock-solid performance.
Where are we? Rock bottom. Tragedies.
Lindsay DePaul's a great little songwriter.
She won Ivan Novello's for her writing.
Rock Bottom is a very, very charming song. I love the presentation of it. It's a bit of a kind of show tune. You can imagine them almost getting up out of their pianos and just taking off their bowler hats with their canes and giving it a bit of that.
Elsewhere in the competition, there was plenty to catch the eye. Not least from the Belgian entry.
And the camera work on that performance it's really the absolute embodiment of different times.
France's Marie-Myriam took home the trophy, knocking Rock Bottom into second place for the 4th time that decade.
Rumour has it, perhaps the BBC didn't necessarily want Rock Bottom to win, because it wouldn't have been in the best interests of having to host it the following year.
But it was France's win that caused our hostess the mostest problems.
Marie-Myriam? I think she's celebrating behind with all the other artists. Can you hear us, Marie?
Angela Rippon had to just fill maybe 30 seconds to a minute, 2 minutes max.
Is she with us?
She didn't know what to do. She had no idea. Once she was off script, she had nowhere to go.
I can imagine the scene backstage now. Someone rushing to find the winning artist. Where is she?
It's a live presenter's nightmare. I mean, bless you, Angela. But here, both Angela and I are still clinging on to linear television like a cat to a curtain.
Oh well, it wasn't all bad news. In 1977, a pint was just 32 pence, so we could all drown our sorrows. Rock Bottom was a top 10 hit all over Europe, and Lindsay DePaul has the honour of being the first woman to sing their own composition in the Eurovision Song Contest.
And Mike Moran went on to write Snot Rap for Kenny Everett a few years later.
By 1978, with pop stars failing in their bids for Eurovision glory, it was becoming difficult to attract famous faces to fetch up for the UK.
As the 70s went on, it was quite obvious that the acts we were supplying weren't winning. Big stars didn't need that platform. They'd already got where they wanted to be. So why on earth would you put yourself through it?
Eurovision needed a shot in the arm, and in 1978, it got one.
1978 is a seismic shift for all Eurovision fans, certainly for those of us at home, because that was the year that the voice of Terry Wogan debuted at Eurovision on the telly.
He's got a look of the French film star about him, this fella. He's plenty of sex appeal. He does appeal to me, but several girls have told me.
I think there's every chance that had Terry Wogan not come along, Eurovision would have probably fizzled out.
Terry was so sarcastic.
The audience looking tremendously happy. Look at all those smiling faces.
And basically he started taking the piss out of it. And that's what salvaged it for us as a nation.
Because it wasn't necessarily about the music anymore. It was about his observations of the acts as they were performing.
All of the family are singers and musicians. Must be hell to be their neighbours.
And that was TV gold.
Along with the wit of Wogan, the UK entry was Coco. Among their number, a face that would become familiar in the Eurovision family.
But 78, we entered a song called The Bad Old Days, and it won the Song for Europe. So now I'm fulfilling my childhood dream. I'm representing my country in the Eurovision Song Contest.
Congregated at the Palais de Congrès were the great and the good of all gay Paris.
Yeah, that's a famous face, isn't it? Isn't that Serge Gainsbourg?
Everything about it was eye-opening beyond belief for me. It was something that I'd never seen before. This massive show, you know, it was the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done in my entire life. Our clothes were great as well, you know. We dressed like in clown costumes. Mine was blimey. Mine was a ridiculous clown costume. And it was their idea that I wore this gold swimsuit thing with this flowing white voile thing that I should have taken off on. Yeah, it was a gold skull cap.
But if we were fielding fledgling bands, Luxembourg sent in the big guns. Baccarat, who had already notched up a #1 hit in the UK and around the world.
Baccarat, of course, one of my personal favourite anthems, Yes Sir I Can Boogie.
And their appearance in the contest was uniquely pan-European.
Coming from Spain, singing in French, representing Luxembourg, singing Parlez-vous Français. Extraordinary.
Though Parlez-vous Français sounded somewhat similar to their boogie banger.
All their songs sound the same, and it's great. There's a kind of slight musical theatre aspect to what Baccarat's lyrics where, you know, you're kind of parachuted into a scenario. So in the same way that Yes or I Can Boogie, lyrically, is a sort of like a job interview at the High Commission of Boogie, you know, where they're sort of asking, you know, they're looking for people who can fulfill a very specific brief. Then Parlez-vous Français is, again, you're parachuted into a very sort of specific situation.
We're in the same frocks, by the way. They haven't changed. Black and white frocks. And it's the mics with the chords. It's the swinging. It's all of that. Take me back. That's phenomenal, isn't it?
Parlez-vous français? But despite a magnificent multicultural mashup, Baccarat only managed 7th place.
And we came 11th. That was the worst the UK had ever done up to that time, you know? And so I've said this before, I felt like I'd let my queen down. I felt I was representing my country and my queen, and we failed miserably, and it was just awful. A horrible time in my life.
Coming up, we celebrate 70s Eurovision's most notorious contestant.
Poor Norway.
Oh, Jantigan.
And there's yet more controversy at the contest.
They cut the transmission, replaced it with flowers, and I believe it was Jordan that declared Belgium the winner.
Eurovision in the 1970s, a glorious smorgasbord of high-cut hot pants, tuneful teens, fab four-pieces and soulful solo acts. There were winners and losers, troubles and triumphs. The contest was a shining light in a difficult decade.
You are watching a piece of modern television history when you watch the Eurovision Song Competition. And I know that sounds a silly statement, but the figures back it up.
In 1978, Israel dominated at the sharp end of the scoreboard.
Habana B is an absolute banger.
I thought they were very good. A bunny bee, a bunny bear. Or Terry Wogan said, I want to be a polar bear, which is very similar, actually.
That gets them roaring as well in the Palais de Congrès.
But the rejoicing as Israel racked up the 12 points was not universal.
1978, Israel wins the contest. Now, the competition is broadcast to countries across the Middle East, North and Africa, and these are countries that often don't recognise the state of Israel, so that was a problem for them. And instead of declaring Israel the winner, they cut the transmission, replaced it with flowers, and I believe it was Jordan that declared Belgium the winner the following day.
A controversial choice, but a conclusive winner. In their first ever Eurovision victory, Israel beat Belgium by 32 points.
It's had quite a long afterlife. I think it's just ended up being used on White Lotus.
And there was another first in 1978. A notorious Eurovision piece of history was made.
1978. Poor Norway.
Oh, Jantigan.
Funny enough, the 2 times that I did the Eurovision, Norway came last.
Norway's Jahn Teigen scored 0 points in 1978, and he became the first artist to do so under that new voting system introduced in 75.
That then became a phrase. 0 points.
Norway
didn't like you.
0 points.
He actually became a national hero. He kind of revelled in his notoriety and entered Eurovision again. He took part in 1982 and 83, didn't harm his career at all. In fact, I would say it actually helped him.
As the decade drew to a close, the world was changing. The UK had a new boss, technology was moving forward, and if you wanted to listen to your favourite Eurovision song, there were new ways to do it. We were entering a brave new world, but Eurovision remained reassuringly familiar.
1979, Genghis Khan from Germany.
I think it's sort of in the tradition of Boney M and Rasputin. So I think Genghis Khan were taking a leaf out of their book and saying, OK, how far can we push the envelope? Should we do a disco song about a Mongolian warlord? It's a very catchy song.
they were robbed.
But not everyone was lucky enough to enjoy Germany's jolly reframing of a 12th century warlord.
In 1979, the competition took place in Jerusalem, and Turkey withdrew after pressure from Arab states.
And several Middle Eastern countries refused to broadcast the show, which meant they all missed out on all of these marvellous moments. Israel did the double, with Milk and Honey lifting the trophy for their song Hallelujah.
It's obviously a very, very simple song, but the way just extra layers are added onto the arrangement, so it's a kind of, by the end, it sounds like a party.
As the decade drew to a close, so did the particularly halcyon age in the history of the world's most famous and infamous song contest.
The 1970s were the golden years of the song competition.
More people watch that than watch the Super Bowl. More people watch that than watch the Olympics.
Buonasera, Roma.
Eurovision in the 70s was just a little spot of joy on a Saturday night once a year, which brought magic and technicolor and music into my life.
I think it was very special, and I hope we never lose that interest in what can bring us together. And music does that.
And long may it rain, because it's the best thing on television.